Welcome back to Unstable TV! And you're through to Irish Couple Reacts. And do stay tuned because this happens every week.
So if you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of these videos. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you!
So we done a video a couple of weeks ago on the history of the Star Spangled Banner. And a lot of people in the comment section said there was a little bit of discrepancies with the information, and that was actually the War of 1812. So we're going to check out a video today on the War of 1812.
So this is going to be explained in 13 minutes, so thanks so much to everyone in the comment section. We see a lot of your suggestions, so we're here now. So guys, without further ado, let's jump straight into this for ourselves and you guys. Let's go!
In 1812, the young nation of the United States took on the country with the most powerful navy in the world in a war that would affect more than just the former colonies and their colonizer. The United States of America first gained freedom from the British in an 8-year-long Revolutionary War that finally came to a close when Britain inevitably recognized the independence of their 13 former colonies on September 3rd, 1783. One of the most relevant impacts of this war that would fuel future tensions between the US and Britain once again was the role of the Native Americans. During the Revolution, the Native Americans mostly supported the Brits, who they hoped would continue to restrict expansion from the US settlers into Native American territory. When Britain failed to maintain its rule over the colonies, the United States eventually accelerated its takeover of native land, causing even more friction between the American societies. This friction only grew stronger as the years went on, as Britain remained a driving force of the discord, since not only had the natives taken its side in the Revolution, but the British also openly encouraged the Native Americans to fight back against their antagonists. By 1812, this, combined with a few other factors, led to the development of a new war. While the United States was clearly unhappy with the united opposition from Britain and the natives, they were also infuriated by allegations that the Royal Navy was utilizing a tactic known as impressment to take US men for their own troops. On top of this, the ongoing strife between Britain and France had a notable impact on the United States. Heavily locked in their own struggle, the warring nations tried to restrict trade from neutral countries and punish anyone who attempted to ignore the constraints. This put the United States in a detrimental position due to their...
Is that not what's happening with Russia now?
That does sound very similar to that.
It does, doesn't it? With the, you know, the sanctions and stuff like that, that even neutral countries aren't allowed to buy off them and stuff. Is that not very similar?
Yeah, like, because I was wondering, like, have we all not heard that in recent news?
Yeah.
That's, no.
Maybe we're taking it wrong, but that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. Talk about using old tactics for new wars, but I don't know. Is it a new war though?
No, because apparently this war's been going on for about 8 years as well with Russia, so, I don't know. It sounds very similar. If it's not, let us know. Or if you think it's the same, let us know too.
I didn't realise the Native Americans were on the British side.
It makes sense though, because it was the Native Americans' land.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like...
And unfortunately they still got a raw deal regardless, because...
I think even if Britain was going to take over, they were going to take over the Native Americans anyway.
Yeah. I think they were just using the Americans as a front for it, was it?
I think so.
Let us know what you guys think. We'll go back into this now. Let's go.
Inability to continue trade with either nation unless they wanted to risk invoking the wrath of the other side. While France took a more laid-back approach to ensure the US abstained from doing business with the British, the latter was more aggressive about the matter. On January 7th, 1807, Britain issued an order in council stating, "It is hereby ordered that no vessel shall be permitted to trade from one port to another, both which ports shall belong to or be in the possession of France or her allies, or shall be so far under their control as the British vessels may not freely trade.
That's the sentence happening now.
Any ships that refuse to obey these restrictions would be subject to seizure by the Royal Navy, cargo and all. By November, the original order was expanded, now to include all the ports and places of France and her allies, or of any other country at war with His Majesty, and all other ports or places in Europe, from which, although not at war with His Majesty, the British flag is excluded, and all ports or places in the colonies belonging to His Majesty's enemies. In retaliation, France, under the command of Napoleon Bonaparte, issued the Milan Decree, which said that every ship, to whatever nation it may belong, that shall have submitted to be searched by an English ship or to a voyage to England, or shall have paid any tax whatsoever to the English government, is thereby, and for that alone, declared to be denationalized, to have forfeited the protection of its king, and to have become English property. Adding on, Napoleon declared that any of the aforementioned ships that enter French ports or those of French allies are good and lawful prizes of his nation. Forced to reply, U.S. President Thomas Jefferson signed the Embargo Act in December of 1807, blocking all international trade from American ports and taking direct aim at Britain. Unfortunately for America, the act backfired and turned the U.S. into more of a victim than anyone else. Emphasizing this point, the Minister to France himself even said, "Here it is not felt, and in England it is forgotten." The effects of the Embargo Act ultimately pushed the U.S. into an economic depression, and it had to be repealed less than 2 years after the initial signature. In its place, the Non-Intercourse Act was passed, which directly forbade trade with Britain and France and their colonies. When this new act still proved to be ineffective, the United States tried once again, this time passing Macon's Bill No. 2 in May of 1810. This bill lifted trading bans and stated that if either France or Britain removed their own restrictions, the U.S. would re-establish an embargo with the opposing nation. By August, Napoleon enacted a plan to exacerbate tension between Britain and the United States, and it ultimately worked. He first told the new president, James Madison, that he intended to exempt the US from his previously established Berlin and Milan decrees, promoting Madison to bring back the Non-Intercourse Act constraints against Britain in November of that year, despite the fact that Napoleon never actually followed through on his proclamation. Britain and the United States were now on the brink of all-out war. The final straw came when the Battle of Tippecanoe unfolded in late 1811, as the U.S. troops claimed victory over the Native Americans, wishing to stop further expansion once again. Given the United States was fairly confident in the belief that the British were supplying the natives with weapons from Canada, a faction of the U.S. Republican Party known as the Warhawks began a heavy push towards an official declaration of war. At last, on June 18th,
I mean, was there any real evidence that they were getting weapons from Canada, or did they just say that?
No, they're supposed to be getting weapons from England.
Yeah, no, but through Canada from England.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So, was there any proof, or did they just assume that that's the way it was, that they could make their own weapons?
Yeah, but this is the question we were asking the Star Spangled Banner. Danielle delved into with the Native American territory, and this is exactly like what you guys have given us here, because we wanted this. It's like, so it was more of a political excuse the United States used to take over the Native Americans' land. They basically said, "Oh my God, England's supplying them. Come on, everyone, let's take up arms and take their land off them," because that's what they done. It was the Native Americans' land forced. And they more or less basically, so they're fighting, the United States fighting England for the same thing the United States doing Native Americans. So it's a chain of, it's mine, till it was actually ours.
It's basically who was going to be the strongest person to take the land is pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it was all, in one sense, they're all tribes fighting over a land.
That's literally what it is.
Yeah. And so I'd say but they had a good political excuse there because they already had economic depression. So of course the only way that anyone would have gotten funding or to help them get any type of clothing or warrant would be to join the army to do whatever they're doing. It's quite like the medieval times.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say, examining away from it a bit, nothing was going on because this bill had passed. So therefore, everyone would have had plenty of people to join up without question because they'd have nothing to do. It's basically like what happened with Germany, with the way they were able to recruit so much in World War II because their economy was hit so bad
Yeah,
that they just had soldiers lining up, because at the end of the day, if we've no food or warmth or anything that we can't get a job, we're going to join the military.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
What I'm taking away, and I think you're taking away, it was a political excuse of they supplied them weapons, let's attack them.
Well, my thing is, did they have any reason to believe that the Native Americans got the weapons from England? Could they not have just made the weapons themselves as well?
Yeah, I never even see that's the thing. I never knew that before. I always assumed they had their own tomahawks, their bows, and
No, but that's what I mean. Was it not? But did they just use that as an excuse to go in, or was there? Did they actually know that for a fact?
yeah, like it doesn't say so far that they know for a fact.
These are the questions we have to ask about history.
Yep. Let us know if you guys know this. If you've any pointers on this, or maybe
We're probably going to get told now in the next few minutes. We just didn't give it a chance.
yeah, it's usually what happens. But if we don't, and there's something you want to tell us, let us know in the comments.
12. President James Madison signed the Declaration against Britain, despite contention about the issue coming from both the House and Senate. Another problem emerged as well when Britain decided to suddenly repeal their trade restrictions before news of the US declaration of war actually reached the British over a month later.
There we are.
Aware of this delay,
It's
Britain
us.
decided not to immediately respond to the call of war and waited to see how the Americans would react to their repeal. When the US got wind of this surprising development, they were, in turn, unsure of how the Brits would react to their declaration of war. Ultimately, the United States decided to follow through on its proclamation and did so by invading Canada, which was a British colony at the time. While the American troops hoped to capture Canadian land to force Britain into negotiation, they had no such success. No one was prepared for war. The British and French have been busy fighting their own battles, and the US military was grossly ill-suited to take on the likes of Britain. The defeats were plenty and humiliating for the Americans. One excessively humbling loss for the US happened when General William Hull surrendered Fort Detroit on August 16, 1812, and his own army to the British troops, and allowed Michigan territory to be deemed as part of Britain. Chased across the Canadian border, as Hull saw the size of his opponent's forces, which was a mix of British and Native American troops, and knowing that his daughter and grandchild were in the fort, he decided to give up without a single shot being fired. Hull's disgraceful failure led to an uptick in Native American raids in the Northwest and British conflict under the command of Major General Henry Proctor. Adding insult to injury, U.S. Brigadier General Henry Dearborn struggled to make any progress on the northeastern border because the militias in New England were not supportive of the war and uninterested in coming together for an attack on Montreal. By October, the Americans were finally able to get some momentum as Major General Stephen von Rensselaer led an army of 3,100 militiamen into the Battle of Queenston Heights. Rensselaer sent some advanced units across the river, where they were able to hold their ground for some time on a slope just above Queenston, and were successful until they were overcome by British forces as the rest of the American troops refused to join the fight. 925 U.S. soldiers were then captured by the British, despite Major General Isaac Brock on the British side being killed during the battle. Yet again, the Americans took another hit in 1813 when an attempt to retake Detroit resulted in a massacre of U.S. prisoners by their Native American opponents. On top of that, Brigadier General Henry Dearborn was replaced by Major General James Wilkins, At long last, though, in September of 1813, U.S. Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry scored a major naval victory at Lake Erie against the forces of British Captain Robert Barclay and opened the gates for more success on the American side. When the Battle of the Thames erupted the following month, the U.S. finally defeated the British and Native American Allied forces. The next spring season, at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, a U.S. militia force faced off with a Native American force known as the Red Sticks and found victory once again, demanding that the losing side cede roughly 23 million acres of land, which would later become Alabama and span partially into Georgia. Another win for the United States followed in the summer, July of 1814, at the Battle of Chippewa, but it was short-lived as the Battle of Lundy's Lane ended in a bloody stalemate shortly after, forcing the Americans to withdraw. The real deciding factor in the war came when Napoleon faced his first exile, allowing Britain to shift more focus to the discord with the United States. The British sliced through the US, destroying government buildings including the White House as they took control of Washington, D.C. The Brits then tried to push farther into Baltimore by September under the authority of General Robert Ross, but were repulsed at the Battle of North Point, where General Ross was killed. In the battle that inspired the U.S. national anthem, more British troops were fought off at Fort McHenry. As these conflicts raged on, peace talks began in Ghent and
Here it is.
eventually resulted in a signed treaty on December 24th, 1814. Still, just as with the declaration of war, the news was delayed and took until February 18th, 1815 to officially be ratified and end the war. The Treaty of Ghent reverted things back mostly to how they were before the combat, with a status quo antebellum. All territory was returned. Britain repealed their trade restrictions, stopped supporting the Native American revolts, and ended their impressment strategies. In the end, the war was essentially a draw, and the only real losing side was the Native Americans, who had high hopes for British help in stopping US expansion. Britain was able to claim victory against the French, and in a way, against the US. Meanwhile, the US had the pride of more or less winning their second war of independence.
No, we won.
So all of that war and loss and devastation for so many years, and it was the Native Americans that lost in the end.
So the original landowners
Yeah.
got the worst deal out of it all.
We're going to give our honest opinions here, by the way. We're not going to sugarcoat anything either.
Yeah.
So, sorry if you upset anyone.
Yeah, like, we're here to learn on YouTube,
Yeah.
and we're doing it from our perspective, and that's why we want you guys here in the comments giving your perspective back.
Exactly.
We want your conversation back with ours. All our reacts are watched first time, so how we feel is what you're getting the raw one, because we want to be as honest with you guys as possible, as the terms and conditions will let us.
Yeah, exactly.
So first off, a very big shout out to the original content creator. Of course, do make sure you go check them out, give them a like, subscribe and share, and all of that good YouTube stuff. And so important, of course, thank you to everyone that does suggest.
Yeah.
We do appreciate all the suggestions we got in for this video.
Absolutely. Especially videos like this, because it's important to know history.
Yeah.
And it's important to know every side of history, not just one side.
Yeah. It especially helped us understand from what you guys were saying on the Star Spangled Banner video. It's so hard for me to say that, I don't know why. This helped come full circle of what you guys were telling us in the comments and after checking out this video, so we appreciate that. Definitely a lot of we talked and conversated through wanting to know more about the Native American side. We definitely got a glimpse here. Now we know there's a lot more to be seen than that. We want to see more type of revolutionary, because like we were saying, we are only really taught about the Boston Tea Party here. Yeah. Tea, we're not British, we're Irish. See that one on the left that was next to England? You should have said Ireland there, but
Well, we were.
We were taken over at the time, so history is history. Yeah, well, the Native Americans, like, from what I've taken away, is political excuses were used in between the wars and the uphill battles between England and America, as America climbed, as he said, for their second war for independence. Did not know it was held in the Netherlands, the talks between America and England. Didn't realise the impact Napoleon had during this time as well. That's really cool to see. I want to know more about him, so thank you guys for that. What did you think, Danielle?
There's definitely a lot of information in that video, and I'm definitely going to have to watch it again, because I didn't take it all in the first time, because there was just so much new stuff in there that we didn't know beforehand. I'm actually surprised from this information that England didn't win.
Yeah.
I am surprised that England didn't win. The world would have been very different if it had of.
Yeah, like if they had managed to keep America. But seeing the fight in the forts and the, as you were saying, the Royal Naval the English had against the United States, that really did make the difference. But they made a comeback themselves. The United States did. So, like Danielle said, we're very surprised that England didn't hold its own and take over. Yeah, from what we've seen there. Now again, we could be missing some parts of it as well. This isn't obviously going to be, it's only 38 minutes, we're not going to get the full history of it, but yeah, you know, from what we've seen there, I mean, they probably could have pushed and probably could have done it. Yeah, but they were more interested in setting up the trade routes from what we've seen. That's what it sounded like. That's what we're picking it up as. Yep. So of course, you guys, everyone out there watching, you history buffs, you non-history buffs, what did you learn in school about this? What did you not learn? What did you learn yourselves? Yep. Of course, if you're from the United States or you're from England, let us know, both of your sides. We want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Anyone across the globe, if you have learned about any of this history and you have an interest in it, of course, get in that comment section. We want to talk to you. We want to hear from you guys. 100%. And overall, let us know about what you thought of the actual history presented in the video. Do you think it's factual? If not, tell us why. And if you do think it is, also tell us why. And that has been our 2 cents, and we will chop ourselves out of this. Broke the AirPods.
As always, you are the beautiful people of YouTube, and we have been Unstable TV.
So, drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of this reaction video. And if you have any suggestions for us to do, let us know too.
And as always, we will see you in the next one. Bye.